Hi, my name is Jennifer. I am the Assistant Program Manager here at the Lakeshore Museum Center, and today's snow science video is going to be all about ice. Specifically, how ice melts using salt. So you might have seen on the roads in the wintertime salt trucks driving around, and maybe you've wondered, how does that work? Why do we use salt? So I've set up an experiment. I have some ice cubes that are dyed green, and I have some salt. So I have two containers. One container, I'm going to fill them up with equal amounts of ice. So we'll check on our measuring cup where we are. Actually going to switch out some of the big chunks. So we have the same amount of ice, give or take a little bit, in each container. So the ice itself will kind of insulate it. It is a little warm in our classroom, but the ice will keep it insulated. So we have about the same amounts of ice in each measuring cup. And our bigger measuring cup, I'm just going to leave alone. We're just going to see how that ice melts. Our smaller measuring cup, I'm going to add some salt to. So we'll just shake it right on the top. So a lot of times, the salt that the trucks use is rock salt. It's bigger crystals of salt. I have table salt like you would use at home. But all salt comes from the same thing. It's all a mineral called halite. So halite is something that we can mine for, and we can get it out of the ground. So we'll add a bit more salt. So now, one has salt, one does not have salt. And what we're going to do now is just wait and see, after about 10 minutes, where our two containers are at, and to see which one is melting faster. Alright, so it hasn't been quite 10 minutes, but I want to show you what has happened. So already, our container that doesn't have salt in it, you can see the bottom, it's pretty much all still solid ice. But our one with salt, if we look at that under, we have a lot of liquid water already. And it hasn't been that much time. So there's still salt on the top, but we have all of that liquid water that our non-salt container doesn't have. It's still solid ice. So when you put salt on ice, what happens is the salt actually lowers the freezing point of the water. So we know that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. But when you add salt on top of it, it lowers that temperature of freezing. So now water can be at about 30 degrees or 32 degrees and it won't freeze. And how that works is the salt, when it mixes with water, it breaks down. So the table salt I'm using is a combination of two elements. It's sodium and chloride. A lot of times you'll see it written out as NaCl, sodium and chloride. When the water breaks down that salt, it separates into separate sodium and chloride. And what those sodium and chloride ions are able to do is they're able to get in between the water molecules and prevent them from freezing. In order for ice to form, the water has to freeze together. Those molecules have to join. So when we have the salt added, they stop that process from happening. So the sodium and the chloride prevent the ice from forming in the first place, which then lowers the temperature of the freezing point. So our non-salt container is still freezing at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. But our salt container is freezing at a lower temperature. So basically, if you think about it, it's kind of warming up faster. And it's accelerated by the fact that once you get water, it actually helps to melt ice faster. So as the salt is working from one side, that water is working from the bottom to help melt the ice, because the water is also warmer than the ice. So there are a lot of things that go into it. So I'm going to keep it going, and we're going to see if eventually this one catches up and starts to get any liquid water in it, or if it just stays solid ice. Alright, so our ice now has been melting for about an hour, a little more than an hour. So I'm going to show you what our two ice are at. So you can see here are two ice containers. Our one that had no salt is starting to melt. We can see that water. But our one that had salt has a lot more. Right? We have a lot more of that liquid, a lot more of the ice has melted. And if we look at it a different way, we can see our smaller one has about 100 milliliters of liquid in the bottom. And this one's a little bigger, so our first line is 200 milliliters, but we're nowhere near halfway for our liquid. So this one probably has about 50 milliliters of liquid, and this one got all the way up to 100. So while it's not completely melted, you can see how salt greatly increases how much ice will melt. You can see that in about an hour of melting, we got double the amount of liquid than we did with our non-salt ice. So next time you see a salt truck driving around on the road, you'll know that it is there to help decrease that ice, to make it easier for cars to drive, for dogs to walk, for people to walk, all of those things that ice really make dangerous. Salt helps to make less dangerous every winter. So that is it for this video of snow science. I hope you enjoy and that you'll be able to get out there and enjoy the real snow while we still have some.